This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me.
This is a story of Cesar Chavez as written by the UFW, History.com, and our personal stories, and it begins near Yuma, Arizona. He was born on March 31st, 1927, to Librado and Juana Chavez. The Chavez family joined the growing number of American migrants who were moving to California amid the Great Depression, first working as avocado pickers in Oxnard, and then as pea pickers in Pescadero. The family made it to San Jose, where they first lived in a garage in the city's Mexican district. They moved regularly, and on the weekends and holidays, Cesar joined his family in working as an agricultural laborer.
So my intro into, or my first meeting with Cesar Chavez, I was 12 years old. I was in 6th grade. It was a summer. I will never forget my first day on the job picking strawberries. I got up at 3:30 in the morning because we had to drive out. Salinas to Gonzales was about at least a 45-minute drive, and my mom had packed me a lunch, and it was a really big lunch. I didn't think I was going to need that much, but as soon as I got there, they told me what I needed to do, and I had to hit the ground running.
I was in charge of marketing. I was 9, and because I spoke the best English, I was in charge of going up to the door and saying, "Hi, my mom and dad want to know if you want us to do work on your farm." And sometimes they weren't very pleasant. They would say bad words and call me racial slurs. I was 9. So I'd walk away and I'd translate it to my mom. They said no. And she'd say, "It's okay. We're going to ask somebody else."
In 1965, I know it sounded like a long time ago, and it was. In 1965, I was an altar boy. And I was lucky. My mom was adamant about me going to school. I wanted to, like a lot of the other guys, to quit school and go to work so we could better our lot. No, but I was the first one on either, in my family to graduate from high school, to go to college.
In March 1946, Chavez enlisted in the United States Navy and was sent to the Naval Training Center in San Diego. In July, he was stationed at U.S. Base in Saipan, and 6 months later moved to Guam, where he was promoted to the rank of Seaman First Class. He was then stationed to San Francisco, where he decided to leave the Navy, receiving an honorable discharge in January 1948. Relocating to Delano, California, where his family had settled, he returned to working as an agricultural laborer. Chavez entered a relationship with Helen Fabella, who soon became pregnant. They married in Reno, Nevada in October 1948, started their family. First Fernando, then Sylvia, then Linda, and 5 more children were to follow. His introduction to labor organizing began in 1952 when he met Father Donald McDonald, an activist Catholic priest, and Fred Ross, an organizer with the Community Service Organization, who recruited Chavez to join his group. Within a few years, Chavez had become national director, but in 1962 resigned to devote his energies to organizing a union for farm workers.
In 1972, my dad was actually paid to see Cesar Chavez speak in Salinas, California. Fast forward to 1975, and my dad joined a union and continued working with Cesar for 20 years to follow.
His vision of Cesar Chavez was every single farm worker belonged to the union. So for that, they can earn respect on the community. They can earn power in the political arena.
In 1965, the March to Sacramento, what farm workers were asking for when I first got exposed was just for the right to vote, whether they could have a union or not. Just that's all they were asking for, was the right to vote. How did the Eagle come about? Well, it's kind of funny. And on some levels, I mean, it had to do with our ancestral background, the Aguila. But what they really wanted to do is they wanted to make something that could be reproduced very quickly because of the pickets and the huelga that they anticipated someday to happen. And that was actually designed by Richard Chavez, Cesar's brother. And so you got to put it in like historical context. There they are trying to figure out. See, they didn't sit down and said, hey, let's make history. They sit down, let's make a difference. And how are we going to do that?
A major turning point came in September 1965 when the fledgling Farm Worker Association voted to join a strike that had been initiated by the Filipino farm workers in Delano's grape fields. Within months, Chavez and his union became nationally known. Chavez's drawing on the imagery of the civil rights movement, his insistence on nonviolence, his resilience on volunteers from urban universities and religious organizations, his alliance with organized labor, and his use of mass mobilizing techniques such as the famous March on Sacramento in 1966 brought the grape strike and consumer boycott into the national consciousness. By 1970, the UFW got grape growers to accept union contracts and had effectively organized most of the industry, at one point in time claiming 50,000 due-paying members.
I was fortunate enough to have participated in a few marches in the 90s. One in particular was in 1994 in Salinas, California. We marched over one of the main bridges in the city to Fresh Express and protested their use of pesticides.
You know, the reason the boycott was started is because of the violence in the fields. And when the workers were being killed, they took the struggle to the cities, asking consumers not to buy certain products. Then putting pressure on the growers. We learned early on that one of the few things that they respected was their money. They like green. And so when we boycotted them, we got their attention. Boycott was the most powerful tool that the union had. That was its army of volunteers. That was the support it had in cities where there were no fields. So it allowed, New York City, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Detroit, Cleveland, Los Angeles, San Francisco, wherever, every major city in the country, there were boycotters there spreading the word about the importance of farm workers getting their own union. To me, the boycott was an incredible experience. I met my wife on the boycott. My family started out of the boycott. Did anybody else fast with Cesar when he fasted? You know, the initial fast that he did was because of the violence in the fields. And he was trying to promote nonviolence. And so he fasted often. A lot of us within the union, well, a lot of people became vegetarians. Fasting was something that I did pretty regularly back then, all of us. At one point, I fasted for 30 days, and it was just a challenge to see if I could do it. Fasting was a good way for us to sharpen our senses. A lot of people did it, but Cesar was the one that was mostly known for it.
At the time, we were living in Salinas Valley. In 1989, we experienced a San Francisco earthquake. My dad left his job in the fields to go and help the hundreds of migrant farm workers who were living in caves when the earthquake hit. He came across California Rural Legal Assistance who saw the work that he was doing, and because they appreciated it, he was offered a job.
Working with Cesar Chavez, he teach me a lot of things about the rights that human beings have. So doing those things, that helps me to get to go to the next step for me to go to work with California Rural Legal Assistance, because they need outreach workers. They need people to work with the community, to interact with the community, and they find out I was a perfect person for them. So now I have 30 years working in that place, and I feel like they pay me for enjoy my work. So my biggest fear is if my boss come back and said, hey, you owe me all the money I pay for the last 30 years, because I enjoy what I do.
For 30 years, Chavez tenaciously devoted himself to the problems of the poorest workers in America. The movement he inspired succeeded in raising salaries and improving working conditions for farm workers in California, Texas, Arizona, and Florida. Cesar Chavez is best known for his efforts to gain better working conditions for the thousands of workers who labored on farms for low wages and under severe conditions. Despite the early victories for farm worker rights, increased use of toxic chemicals meant to control pests on commercial farms continued to be a major health hazard for farm workers and their families. In 1986, Cesar Chavez kicked off his Wrath of Grapes campaign. Traveling around the country, he delivered a powerful speech that once again shed light on the plight of farm workers. Specifically, he drew attention to the use of dangerous pesticides and how pesticides drift and lingering pesticide residue was poisoning farm workers and their children.
We need to meet the growers and stop their madness at the marketplace. If enough people join us and don't buy grapes, the growers will have to do something about the pesticides, at least in grapes. And once we get grapes, we can go and get other products too.
In his speech, Chavez stated that he and the other farm workers, quote, were the first to recognize the serious health hazards of the agricultural pesticides to both consumer and ourselves, end quote. These health hazards include birth defects to children born to mothers and fathers who were exposed to these pesticides while working in the fields.
The dangers posed by Captan are not confined to farm worker families. The California Department of Agriculture found residues of Captan and 10 other pesticides on grapes they sampled. Most of these residues cannot be completely washed off. The long-term effects of pesticides on consumers are unknown and may not show up for many years. California is one of the richest agricultural regions in the world. In 1984, state growers used more than 300 million pounds of pesticides, some of the most toxic chemicals ever manufactured. Only a portion of sprayed pesticides reach their target. The rest drift out of control, often for miles. Pesticides also seep into underground water supplies, threatening neighboring communities.
I was just reflecting on remembering when my parents were migrant workers in Madera. We didn't have childcare, so at the time I think I was about maybe 7 or 8, and my brother's 6, 5, and the older brothers were working with the family, so we all would, go together. But my brother and I, we would sit underneath the grapevines and just kind of help out maybe with the paper, lay out the paper for the grapes to be put down. So the struggle that my mom was doing and my brothers were doing and working, we didn't realize it because we were just innocent kids playing with the grapes and the dirt. And it was kind of fun because I remember sitting there going, oh, look, Memo, there's planes, let's check them out. And we're looking at the planes thinking how cool that they're so close to us. And then I remember when we were pointing at the planes, kind of like mesmerized, my mom jumps over us and covers us and just covers us and puts us down. And I was startled. I didn't know what that meant. But it's because the planes would just spray pesticide as we were working. But I didn't know that. I just thought, oh, how cool, there's planes right by us. And so that was one of the moments that I remember as a kid.
As a labor leader, Chavez employed nonviolent means to bring attention to the plight of farm workers. He led marches, called for boycotts, and went on several hunger strikes. He also brought the national awareness to the danger of pesticides to workers' health. His dedication to his work earned him numerous friends and supporters, including Robert Kennedy and Jesse Jackson. Unfortunately, on April 23, 1993, Cesar Chavez died peacefully in his sleep near Yuma, Arizona, a short distance from the small family farm in Gila River Valley, where he was born more than 66 years before. The founder and president of the United Farm Workers of America, AFL-CIO, was in Yuma helping the UFW attorneys defend the union against a lawsuit brought by Bruce Church Incorporated, a giant Salinas, California-based lettuce and vegetable producer. Farm workers, family members, friends, and union staff took turns standing vigil over the plain pine coffin which held the body of Cesar Chavez. Among the honor guard were many celebrities who had supported Chavez throughout his years of struggle to better the lot of farm workers throughout America. Many of the mourners had marched side by side with Chavez during his tumultuous years in vineyards and farms of America. For the last time, they came to march by the side of the man who had taught them to stand up for their rights through nonviolent protest and collective bargaining. The death of Chavez marked an era of dramatic change in American agriculture. His contributions would be eroded, and others would have to shoulder the burden of his work. But Cesar Chavez, who insisted that those who labor in the earth were entitled to a share fairly in the reward of their toil, would never be forgotten. On August 8, 1994, at a White House ceremony, Helen Chavez, Cesar's widow, accepted the Medal of Freedom for her late husband from President Bill Clinton. On December 6, 2006, California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and First Lady Maria Shriver inducted Chavez into the California Hall of Fame. And although it's not yet a federal holiday, President Barack Obama proclaimed March 31st Cesar Chavez Day in the United States, with Americans being urged to observe this day with appropriate service, community, and educational programs to honor Cesar Chavez's enduring legacy.
I really appreciate the type of leader Cesar Chavez was because he taught people to speak up for themselves. He taught people their rights and how to fight for their rights, and also the importance of doing that. He's definitely a hero in my book, and I appreciate everything that he did to get my family to where they are now.
I think one of the biggest ways that he impacted my family was just his nonviolence way of trying to deal with things. Coming from a Mexican family, the word machista is thrown out a lot where, the man is supposed to be violent or the man is supposed to deal things with blows. But he really came in and sought the ability of being able to deal with issues that were going around the world in a very peaceful way. And that was truly a way that he impacted myself and really a lot of what my family started to go throughout the years.
So what I learned from basically following Cesar Chavez and what he did for us was that everybody can make a difference, basically. One person could actually make a difference, but a community can make even a bigger difference and such a big impact.
He was a great man because he was a mentor for thousands of people, even not farm workers. So always I was along with him. I enjoy his company. Like being in the university, learning a lot of things.
Mr. Chavez, what do you see the immediate shape of your struggle in the future?
What I want, more than anything else, I'd like to see the poor take a very direct part in shaping society and let them make the decisions. And whatever we say, whatever anybody says has really little consequence if the people aren't involved. And in our case, if the poor aren't involved, change will never come.